The Trump administration is facing their most significant challenge to date with the 2026 midterms because if Democrats can flip both chambers of Congress, the House and the Senate, they can revoke any of Donald Trump's executive orders. This is the electoral angle, and welcome to my 2026 midterm Senate prediction. Starting with these safe Democrat states, I think these states have no chance of going red. Those are Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, Illinois, Minnesota, New Jersey, Delaware, Virginia, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. Now, the safe red states are Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and South Carolina. That leaves these 11 battleground states to decide the Senate. Now, let's talk about the national climate. There's a lot of energy for Democrats, especially with the high school ice walkouts, in addition to No Kings protest. And Trump doesn't look great, especially with the conflict in Iran. This is a headline from today with them negotiating the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, which I feel like has been opened and closed like 100 times. And that's a sentiment carried by a lot of individual Americans. And with this drama comes to distrust with Trump and his administration. Also, the affordability crisis, especially with this Iran situation with oil going up, most Americans are worried about rising costs, and that's the big reason why Trump won. Trump promised a lower cost, and Americans don't feel as if that's happening. Also, the last elections, the 2025 elections, was amazing for Democrats. Here's an article of them bragging about it. But I mean, everyone agrees they swept. They did much better than expected, which is showing a lot of energy. And it makes sense. Trump has a very low approval rating right now. He's sub 40 approval rating. With all this, it looks like it's primed to be a Democrat sweep. But there's one thing Republicans have, and that's money. For like the first time ever, Republicans have way more money than Democrats. Republicans have the National Committee over $100 million, and Democrats are in debt. The thing is, this is more applicable to the House and the Senate because in the Senate, there's a lot of individual candidates. It's more candidate-central campaigning than the House, which is more party. And individual Democrats are doing pretty good, especially James Talarico in Texas. He raised $27 million. So, I mean, it does look good for Democrats on paper in the Senate. But I want to go back to these 11 toss-up states. Donald Trump won 9 of them in 2024. Let's pull up the map. Nebraska, he won by 20. Texas, he won by 13.7. And you can go on and on. The 2 states that he lost were Maine and New Hampshire. If Democrats win those 2 states, they're at 46 seats. They're still at a massive deficit. So the fact that the Senate is even in contention is because of how unpopular Trump is. Which means that these Democrats have to win states because they have to win 51 seats to have a majority because J.D. Vance is the tie-breaking vote if Republicans get 50 seats. So Democrats have to win states that Trump won by 10 to even be competitive at the Senate. So they're working with a big advantage in terms of national environment and energy, but a massive structural disadvantage. So let's hop state by state, starting with Nebraska, a state that Trump won by 20.5. You might be thinking, how is this even a race? Well, it's because it's not a Republican versus a Democrat. It's going to be a Republican versus an independent because the Democrats are going to withdraw and support the independent Dan Osborn. And right now, he's not polling bad. Ricketts is winning in most polls, but he's up by 5 in one of the polls. And the polls, if you notice, like some of these polls are against Dems. Ricketts is obviously doing better then, but when it's against Dan Osborn, the independent, Ricketts is either barely winning or losing. That said, the same thing happened in 2020 where Dan Osborn ran against a Republican and lost by 6-7. But the difference is Fisher is, I guess, a longer, more career politician than Ricketts, who is kind of new to the Senate. So a lot of the criticisms couldn't really stick. And it's Nebraska. It's going to vote for Republican. Likely red. Next state is going to be North Carolina. So that's a state that Trump won by 3.2. But the candidate is actually the popular governor, Roy Cooper. Roy Cooper, he ran in 2020 as a governor and 2016. So he's been governor for 8 years from 2016 to 2024. He in 2020 when Trump won North Carolina by like 1.2, he won North Carolina by 4.5. So that shows some pretty strong popularity for him. And he's pulling up by 6.8. He's doing strong in the polls. He has good name recognition, longtime governor. He's going to win this race. Now, Florida has been known as a new Republican state. And Moody is doing very good in polling. Most polls have her up by 5 to 10, but there are some polling with her down, especially because Florida is heavily Hispanic, and you can make the argument that maybe the ICE raids might hurt Republicans with Hispanics. But Florida has been trending to the right for a long time. It was an Obama state. Obama won it twice. Trump won it by a little bit, 2020 by more, and then 2024, he won it by 13. It's just shifting one direction, and I just don't see it shifting back. That state is going to be likely Republican. Now let's go to Georgia. State Trump won by 2.2. John Ossoff is dominating in the polls. And Georgia polls are historically accurate. Ossoff is the incumbent, a factor of incumbency. Accurate polls, he's dominating. John Ossoff is going to win this election. Now let's talk about Iowa. Iowa is a state that Trump won by 13.2, but their incumbent Senator Joni Ernst is not running for re-election. And polls are pretty mixed, with Hinson slightly up against the multiple potential Democrats. But this is a very contested race. A lot of, obviously, you have two Democrats running. So there's not a lot of name recognition, especially with no incumbent. And when there's no name recognition, usually the candidates start down and they go up once people start to hear about them. Both candidates on both sides. But it's important to consider Iowa has a conservative electorate, which means once they start to learn about the candidates, they might choose the more conservative candidate. That makes the most sense. So I'm pretty confident that Iowa will go red. Now, Ohio's a very interesting state because Trump won it by 11.2. It actually should not have a Senate election this year, but because J.D. Vance resigned his seat to be vice president, they do. Now, the candidate running has been a senator since 2006. Sherrod Brown. He won a lot then. And then in 2012, he won a lot. 2018, after Trump did very good in Ohio, he still won by 7 points. But they finally got him in 2024 when he lost to Bernie Moreno by 3.6. But it's important to know that he's been a senator for decades. Ohio knows who he is, which should help his campaign. But he's not indestructible. That said, he barely lost 3.6. That's not a huge margin. And it's going to be a much bluer year in 2026 and 2024, which does mean he might do pretty well. But there's something weird. He's losing in polls right now. And for those who don't know, usually the more recognized candidate starts off higher before they start to go down once the people learn about the new candidate, Husted, who is a new name, not a senator right now. People don't know who he is. Once, obviously, the conservative electorate of Ohio learns about him, they might like him. He should go up. Brown, they all know who he is. He really has no room to increase, which means that this race actually isn't looking as good for Brown as it theoretically should on paper. So I have him losing. Now let's talk about New Hampshire, a state that Kamala Harris won by 2.8. It's between two very well-known names, Chris Pappas and John Sununu. Chris Pappas is the incumbent senator, so it makes sense that he's starting up. But John Sununu might be even more well-known than Pappas because he was senator decades ago. His brother was governor until 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and his dad was also had high power in New Hampshire. The Sununu family is like royalty in New Hampshire, and that should mean that he should start high because of name recognition, and he's not right now. Plus, it's a blue state. Plus, there's a lot of bad things with Trump going on in Republicans, so I think that Pappas will ultimately keep his seat. Which leaves the more tight races. We have Alaska, Texas, Michigan, and Maine. These can go either way, and they will really decide the Senate. If Republicans can pick up one of these four seats or keep one of these four seats, they're good. If they lose all 4 seats, then they lose their majority in the Senate. Let's start with Texas. Trump won this state by 13.7, which is kind of a surprise because it was a state that was actually getting bluer and bluer and bluer. Look, just kept on getting bluer, and then Trump reeled it back. He did great with Hispanics. But again, that whole Hispanic gains might see significant harm due to the ICE raids. Also, Talarico, the Democrat, is dominating in polls. Like, look at this. He's up 7, 8, 5, 3, 2, 1. Only one poll on the New York Times has him down. Let's point a note down to Cornyn. And if you look between Paxton and Cornyn, Talarico does worse against Cornyn than he did against Paxton. Trump endorsed Paxton, which means now the worst candidate in terms of actually winning the election in polling is going up against Talarico, which makes it easier for Talarico to win. Also, Talarico is a great candidate on its own. Remember this article, $27 million last quarter? He can raise money. So even though Republicans are doing better nationwide with money, he doesn't care because he has his own money. But there is a bit of a scandal with him. He said God is non-binary once, and he says things like atheists are more Christ-like than Christian colleagues, which might be effective messaging in some parts of the country. But we're talking about Texas here. They might not resonate with this message. Well, that said, he has so much momentum. So much is going his way. I think he's going to win this race. Now down to 3 more states. Remember, if Republicans can pick up one of them, they get the Senate. The next state is Maine, a state that Kamala Harris won by 6.9. But what's interesting is they have a Republican senator incumbent, Susan Collins, who historically has done very well. She won by 8.6 in 2020, despite Biden winning the state by around 10. She won by 37 in 2014, and she won by 23 in 2008. So she's a career-long senator. Everyone knows her name, and everyone in Maine liked her. But that liked is important. Her approval rate has been falling for the past few years. It's much lower than it has ever been, which means it must be harder for her to get reelected. And right now she's polling not great. She's losing. She lost every poll to Platner, who's probably going to win. She won 2 polls, but they're against Mills, and Mills ain't doing good in the primary polls. So she's probably going to go against Platner, and Platner is beating her in the polls by a lot. That said, she was down by a lot in the polls in 2020, yet she still won by a crazy margin. In 2014, she was projected to win by 29.2, yet she won by 37. 2008 projected to win by 14.6, she won by 23. She has a history of doing better than the polls. But the problem is the national environment is much worse for Republicans than it was in 2014 and 2020, and her approval rating ain't going up. So for those reasons, I have this seat flipping. Tilt Democrat. The next state is Alaska, a state that Trump won by 13.1. But what's interesting is the Democrat presumptive nominee is Peltola, who is doing very well in the polls. She's winning. And if you want to know why, it's because she's well known in Alaska. She won in 2022 for Alaska at large as a congressional district, won by 10 points in Alaska. In 2024, she lost her seat by 2. But keep in mind, Trump won by 13 in Alaska in 2024, and she reduced the margin down to 2. So she does much better than her party at large in the state. And in 2026, it's a much bluer year than 2024, which means if she's able to keep it close in a red year, and 2022 was kind of a red year, it was R+3 national environment, yet she still won by 9.9. So she is very good at winning elections. It's going to be a great year for Democrats. She's already up in the polls. She's going to win the Senate seat. Now, last state is Michigan. Michigan, Trump won the state by 1.4. Mike Rogers, the Republican, is currently winning in most polls. These polls are where he's losing or back from January, but recently he's been doing pretty well. He was actually the nominee in 2024 for Michigan. If you notice, he wasn't doing as well in polls here. The polling average was him losing by 2.3. He brought the margin down to 0.3. So he has overperformed polls, and right now he's up in the polls. I like his odds. Trump won the state. He has some good name recognition from the last election. He's going to win the state, leaving the Senate to a 50-50 tie, giving the tie-breaking vote to J.D. Vance, meaning that the majority party of the Senate will be the Republican Party. Thanks so much for watching, and comment down below your Senate prediction.